All right, Hank, let's break it down. What was the damage after the 34-30 loss to Oklahoma in terms of the recruit reaction, or you tell us, was it
Yeah.
not as bad as maybe Longhorn fans are worried about?
Yeah, no, this isn't the kind of win or sorry, kind of loss that's going to negatively impact Texas. That atmosphere. I had people texting me prior to kickoff, like in amazement. They had never seen an atmosphere like that. People watching the game, people at the game. You were there. It was electric. And that kind of environment coupled with that kind of game, Texas lost the game in the final minute. It wasn't like they rolled over. It wasn't like they got beat 49-0 like Oklahoma did the year before. And so, that's not going to negatively impact things. We saw a lot of good things from Texas. Obviously you wrote about Quinn and how he responded to the early turnovers, and he battled back. Texas was right there in position to win the game. That last defensive series, I think they would have wanted to make some adjustments. The four plays at the goal line trying to get in the end zone. I think Sark would have made some changes probably, but I think kids, they saw two teams battling it out. It's not going to negatively impact Texas. It could positively impact Oklahoma. People taking notice more of them. Maybe they thought they weren't so sure about them, and they showed up and played a really good game. So I think it could certainly help them. But in terms of negatively impacting this 2024 class, or even the recruits in attendance or beyond, I think it only helps them. I think they saw an exciting environment they could potentially be part of one day.
Yeah, Hank, looking back at the Red River shootout, one thing that shocked a lot of us was the line of scrimmage. We thought Texas on both sides would win that matchup, and they lost that matchup on Saturday. And I know Connor Robinson being the third string center coming in doesn't help anybody, but how shocked were you to see Oklahoma's defensive line man up like that, especially on that goal line play that you just mentioned? Just four straight stops, probably the biggest moments of the game. And then offensively, Dylan Gabriel being able to use his legs, getting over
Yeah.
100 yards on the ground.
Yeah, I was really surprised. That Texas defensive line has been just one of the strengths all season. They've been really fun to watch. Just dominating opponent after opponent. And Oklahoma came to play, and again on that goal line series, trying to punch it in. What Sweat and Byron Murphy were in there blocking, and they couldn't couldn't get in. It was kind of shocking to see. So that's something I'm sure that they can use as kind of a chip on their shoulder. I know one recruit I was talking to, I think it was Melvin Hills, who's committed to Texas, defensive lineman. He was talking about how, when we saw it was a much different game, but that SEC championship a couple of years ago when Georgia lost to Alabama and really just got bullied on both sides, on both lines of scrimmage. And that was kind of, that was Georgia's strength at that point in the season. They get bullied, manhandled by Alabama. They meet them again in the national championship game month and a half later, or a month later. And it was a different story. That was where they kind of won the game in fourth quarter. They were able to really, dominate and affect Bryce Young. So certainly, I think that's an area Texas will address, and they have the guys. Those guys are going to respond, I'm sure, and maybe we'll see a different story. Come December if Texas is able to see them again at Jerry World.
Hank, Horns fans need good news. They got 2 weeks to stew in this loss. You got any good news for them?
Yeah, this is going to be a big recruiting week. The staff has the week to focus on the recruiting trail. We're going to see, the entirety of the coaching staff out on the road at games this weekend, Thursday, Friday. They're going to go, make appearances, see guys, make sure that if they haven't talked to somebody in a while, that they're going to be talking to these guys. So that can always get things going. But again, 2024, it's a situation where there's a handful of guys left. They addressed a lot of their needs in the summer, and so from September through November, there's really it's not a lot of commitments or anything like that. It's more just working to stay in it with these guys down the finish line. Because if you wait this long in recruiting, most guys just kind of are like, hey, why don't I just wait till the early signing period? Unless they're in jeopardy of losing a spot in the class. I think most guys kind of just like to play the long game. And so, guys like Kobe Black, I think one bit of good news you could say there is we've confirmed he wasn't at his Texas A&M official visit this weekend, which was that's a pretty big piece of news. There's word he was at the Red River shootout. I haven't confirmed that myself. I've seen it reported. no reason to doubt it. He hasn't told me yes or no yet. So, that's something, especially in a situation where it's probably Texas versus Texas A&M for Kobe Black. Ryan Wingo, I know Chris Jackson, the wide receivers coach, he's going to be up in Missouri this weekend or on Friday night to see him. I think Texas is still right there for him and probably in pole position. And then, there's some other recruitments we're watching down the stretch. Solomon Williams, that's another one we're kind of seeing come down to Texas A&M, Alabama, Texas right there in it. They're working on flipping DeAndre Carter from Auburn. That's one that could potentially happen. So there's things in motion. I think it'll be, we're going to see a lot of more kids visit for the final 3 home games in DKR. And I think it'll be, pretty momentous last, 8 weeks of the 2024 class leading into early signing day.
Hank, let's talk about the current freshmen on this Texas team, to where they were, where you saw them in high school last year, to what they've been doing now, from Derek Williams to Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad. I'm probably missing someone, but you get the picture here. Yep. What have you seen in all of those guys thus far this season, just on the transition from high school, now playing some pretty big minutes on the college level?
Yeah, I was covering Alabama this time last year, and I kind of look at it. I know Alabama really wanted Anthony Hill. They really wanted Malik Muhammad in their class, and when Nick Saban wants a defensive back, you kind of have it. You're like, oh, this kid's probably pretty good. And I think we've obviously seen him perform really well in the minutes he's been playing. Obviously, with Ryan Watts out. Anthony Hill, I know leading into his freshman season, there was, all the buzz last year was Harold Perkins at LSU, like that, what he could do at linebacker and, affect the game. That's what Anthony Hill's doing now. I mean, he is a star, and he's really fun to watch. He's really kind of found his rhythm and has really excelled. He's a fun one to watch. Beyond him, Jonte Cook, we've seen little glimpses. I know Sark said he wanted to probably get him more minutes, maybe DeAndre Moore we'll see more of as well later in the season, but we've seen how special Jonte Cook can perform. I'm trying to think who are some other freshmen that we've really seen excel, but
Derek Williams.
Yeah, Derek Williams, he's shown out a lot, obviously, with some of the injuries back there in the secondary. So they're all playing up to that ranking. When you're a 5-star guy, it's pretty much expected. It used to be, you get recruited, you're a star freshman, you need a year or two, you need a redshirt year. Now it's kind of, what can you do for us right now? And these kids are certainly doing a lot for Texas, particularly on defense.
Did you see Anthony Hill pick up Tawi Walker and just body slam him?
Yeah.
I mean, that was impressive.
Yeah.
That's a 200-pound man. He just picked up and dunked.
Lightweight.
Speaking of dunking, Hank, what's the latest on the Texas basketball recruiting front?
Yeah, we're starting to see some things go in motion. Last week we reported Josiah Mosley and Curtis Givens, 2 of Texas's basketball targets. One's a forward from Stony Point up in Round Rock, and then the other's a guard from I think Monteverde Academy. Anyway, they both committed elsewhere. We reported last week that's where things were trending. Obviously, see a local kid go elsewhere. Texas did like him, but you're going up against programs like Villanova and some other heavyweight schools. You're going to sometimes those kids are going to go elsewhere, and he did. He's going to Villanova. Givens committed to LSU, so that kind of leaves a handful of guys we're still watching that can join Cam Scott in this 2024 class. One of which I just wrote about this morning, Asa Newell, who's a 5-star power forward. Another guy at Monteverde Academy, which I don't know how those guys are going to lose a game this year. They've got Asa Newell, Liam McNeely, Curtis Givens, Cooper Flagg, like the top 5 players in the country all on the same team. But Asa Newell was just off of an official visit to Georgia this past weekend, and he actually has ties to Georgia. His older brother plays for the Bulldogs, and he has a really, close connection with that staff, obviously with the family connection. So that's kind of been seen as the, maybe the team he's leaning to, for good reason. He has family ties there. And there's been reports out that it's Georgia versus Alabama for Asa Newell. And I've written, that talking to people at Texas, it seems, that Texas believes that Texas is still part of the race for Asa Newell. And I talked to Asa's dad last night, and he said they've actually cut off communication with everyone recruiting them because they're trying to make a decision. So it looks like everyone's made their final recruiting pitch, and a decision should come soon. So I'd probably lean towards Georgia, but he went to Texas for an official visit last month, had a really good time. It was while Texas was in Tuscaloosa, the football team. So I think he got to be part of that celebration when they got back at the fountain. So they're in it, and then a couple more. Nick Cody, a 4-star power forward from Texas, he's announcing. I think Joe Tipton reported that he's announcing on November 2nd, which is about the timeline he gave us. That's going to be, I think he has a top 7, maybe top 6, but I think that's probably Texas, Houston with Nick Cody. Those are probably the 2 teams I'm watching closest. And then Trey Johnson, obviously, the 5-star combo guard, originally from the DFW area. I think he's playing his final year at Link Academy. So he's a guy that Texas has been pressing for. I think it's probably Texas Baylor battle there. But there's going to probably be like a 4-man class. So they got Cam Scott. We'll see who else they get. But I think the 2 names or the 3 names to watch right now are Newell, Cody, and Trey Johnson in terms of the targets to watch closest.
Yeah, Hank, even though we're in the middle of the football season, the orange and white game at Gregory Gym is next Tuesday. So basketball is coming right on up. How do you think this 2024 team is going to be? I know a lot of people have expectations of getting right back to the Elite 8 area, but that's very difficult to do. But Rodney Terry's done a hell of a job with this coaching staff, bringing in some high-quality guys where you could probably get back to that point if you play some good basketball. What do you think this 2024 Horns basketball team is going to look like?
Yeah, I think, they've got the pieces. They're deep. They added a lot of veteran experience from the transfer portal. They're able to get some guys back, obviously. Dylan Mitchell coming back. And, I think someone reported, IT Horton's been lighting it up in practice already from UCF. So, I haven't followed them as closely since switching over beats, but, from what I've seen and, obviously covering recruiting for this 2024 class, guys are excited about them. A lot of people followed that Elite 8 run. Should have been a Final Four run. That was still pretty wild, but, I think, they got the police, they got the kind of the mixture of the veteran leadership from the portal, and then, the talent they're bringing back from last year's roster, and, some of those guys in the 2024 class from the prep level, Chris Johnson. So I think they could be a really talented team. I think they'll contend for the Big 12 again, and could be another exciting year in Austin.
Last thing, Hank, I saw in the Stampede, you're already looking ahead to 2025. Just some general thoughts on how the Longhorns football recruiting is shaping up for 25.
Yeah, so Jordan Scruggs and I did a breakdown, kind of did a class projection or early class projection on the offensive side of the ball. We'll obviously do a defensive side of the ball later, but there's a lot of talent out there, and a lot of them were at the Red River Shootout. But it's a really deep class. I think you look at the wide receiver position. I think DeCorian Moore, the 5-star wide receiver from Duncanville, I don't think anybody's like a can't miss prospect, because there's always another person. There's always the transfer portal. But DeCorian Moore, like if there was, he's like the closest to it, I feel like. That kid is insane. He's committed to LSU right now, obviously, but Texas isn't going to stop recruiting him. And I think Texas is honestly in an okay spot for him right now in terms of, eventually maybe changing his mind. Teammates with Colin Simmons, Alex January, the 2 2024 commits from Duncanville. So he was part of that group we put together. The running back, I think, the running back position, Tashard Choice, I think, has another, wealth of options at his disposal. Guys like DeAndre Ryden, Jordan Davison from Mater Day. I think 2 guys that are probably the 2 of the top 3 targets. Harlan Berry is another, but I think the 2 we put in the class were Ryden and Davison. KJ Lacey, obviously, out of Saraland. He's been just lighting up the stat sheet this fall. He had 7 touchdown passes last Friday night, and they're that's 6A football in Alabama. They're the number 1 team in the state. He has Ryan Williams to throw to, so that makes things easier. But when you watch his games, he spreads the ball around. He's a really talented prospect. And then offensive line, there's a lot of guys out there that especially in that DFW area. There's a lot of offensive tackles that are highly ranked. That Texas is right there in the mix for. And then the tight end position, we'll see. They've kind of started to press for this Emory Winston tight end from Georgia. He actually visited for the game this past weekend as well. But that's a spot you would expect Texas to really be in the mix for some elite tier tight ends when it's all said and done with what they've done with Jatavian Sanders and Gunnar Helm playing better as well. So it should be a pretty strong class, and especially if they can finish off this season with the expectations we've all had for them. They could roll into that 2025 class with some momentum.
Hank South, horns247.com. Hank, appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Hank. Appreciate you, dog.